few decades ago in America. In the middle of civil rights storm, rose a man with nothing more than his voice, his faith, and his unshakable dream. His name was Martin Luther King Jr. And his dream was not just for himself, not just for Black Americans, but for an entire world that longed for equality. But how did a preacher's son from Atlanta shake the most powerful nation on earth without firing a single bullet? How did he become a threat so big that the government itself tried to silence him? And why does his dream still echo today? Let's dive into the real story of Martin Luther King Jr., a story not just of speeches and marches, but of sacrifice, betrayal, and unshakable hope. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. His father was a Baptist minister, and his mother was a school teacher. Sounds like a normal middle-class family, right? But the world he was born into was anything but normal. The South was chained by Jim Crow laws that legally enforced segregation. From buses to bathrooms, everything was divided by color. White and colored. Equal on paper, but anyone could see it was far from equal. Young Martin had his first painful taste of racism when he was just 6 years old. His childhood friend, a white boy, suddenly stopped playing with him. Why? Because the boy's parents said, "We don't want our son playing with a colored child." Imagine that. You're only 6, and the world is already telling you, you're less. That wound never left him. But here's the twist. Instead of letting bitterness poison him, Martin buried himself in books. He was so sharp that he skipped 2 grades in high school. At just 15, he entered Morehouse College. That's right, while most kids were worried about pimples and high school dances, Martin was in college debating philosophy, religion, and the meaning of life. At first, he wasn't sure he wanted to be a preacher like his father. He thought about becoming a doctor or a lawyer. But the more he studied, the more he realized that the pulpit wasn't just about preaching the Bible. It was about using the platform to fight for justice. He read about Mahatma Gandhi, who had used nonviolence to push the British out of India. That idea hit him like lightning. You don't need to raise a gun to raise a nation. You need courage, discipline, and above all, love. That seed of nonviolence planted itself deep in Martin's heart. After finishing his doctorate in theology, Martin became pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, in 1954. He was just 25 years old. Think about that, a young man, barely out of school, suddenly thrown into a community drowning in racial tension. And here comes the suspense, the incident that would catapult him into history. On December 1, 1955, a quiet, tired seamstress named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery bus. That simple act of defiance sparked outrage. Black leaders in the community decided to fight back. They called for a bus boycott. And guess who they chose to lead it? The young preacher, Martin Luther King Jr. At first, Martin was hesitant. He was new, he didn't want to be a target. But then he thought, if not me, then who? He accepted. That night, standing in a crowded church, Martin gave a fiery speech. We are not wrong in what we are doing. If we are wrong, then the Supreme Court of this nation is wrong. If we are wrong, then God Almighty is wrong. The crowd erupted. The boycott began. For 381 days, the Black community of Montgomery refused to ride the buses. They walked miles to work, carpooled, and sacrificed comfort. The bus system lost tons of money. White officials tried everything: threats, arrests, violence. Martin himself was arrested, his house bombed while his wife and baby were inside. But he didn't give in. And finally, in 1956, the Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. The boycott was a victory. And Martin Luther King Jr. He was no longer just a local preacher. He was now the face of a growing civil rights movement. But with victory came danger. The FBI began watching him. White supremacists sent death threats daily. Yet Martin kept going. He co-founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference SCLC in 1957, gathering pastors and activists to push nonviolent protests across the South. His weapon wasn't hate, it was the power of moral conscience. Every march, every sit-in, every boycott was designed to expose America's hypocrisy, a nation claiming to be the land of the free, yet enslaved by racism. Fast forward to 1963. Birmingham, Alabama. The city was a boiling pot of racial hatred. Peaceful protesters were met with police dogs, tear gas, and high-pressure fire hoses. And here's where Martin's strategy of nonviolence shined brightest. The world saw on TV the brutality unleashed on children, teenagers, ordinary men and women just for demanding equality. The images shook America's soul. And from a jail cell in Birmingham, Martin wrote one of the most powerful letters in history, Letter from Birmingham Jail, where he explained why waiting for freedom was not an option. Justice too long delayed is justice denied. His words cut deep. Then came the moment that would etch his name in eternity. August 28, 1963. The March on Washington. Over 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial, demanding jobs and freedom. Standing on those steps, Martin delivered his most famous speech. "I have a dream that one day children will not be judged by the color of their skin but by the content of their character. A dream that freedom will ring across America." The crowd roared. Millions watching on TV felt chills. That speech was more than words, it was prophecy. It captured the pain of the present and the hope of the future in one breath. But don't think the road was smooth after that. After the March on Washington, Martin faced backlash, even from his own allies. Some younger activists thought he was too soft, too patient. They wanted more radical action. Meanwhile, the government tightened its surveillance. The FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover, labeled him the most dangerous Negro in America. They bugged his phones, tried to ruin his reputation, even sent him a letter suggesting he should end his life. Yes, the government tried to push him to suicide. But Martin refused to be broken. In 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. At just 35, he was the youngest recipient at the time. He used that platform not to bask in glory, but to push harder for change. And change was coming. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed segregation in public places. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 gave black citizens the right to vote without racist barriers. These were monumental victories. But Martin knew the battle wasn't just about laws. It was about hearts, minds, and economic justice. He began speaking out against poverty and the Vietnam War. He believed that fighting racism without fighting poverty was like patching a sinking ship without fixing the hole. This made him even more unpopular with the powerful. By 1967, his approval rating among white Americans had plummeted. But Martin wasn't chasing popularity, he was chasing justice. He launched the Poor People's Campaign, planning to bring thousands to Washington to demand economic equality. But he never got to see it. April 4, 1968. Memphis, Tennessee. Martin was there to support striking sanitation workers who were demanding fair wages and dignity. That evening, he stood on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Across the street, a man named James Earl Ray raised a rifle. One shot, just one. And the dreamer fell. The news spread like wildfire. Riots erupted in cities across America. The man who preached nonviolence was silenced by violence. He was only 39 years old. But here's the truth: death did not kill his dream. In fact, it immortalized it. Because Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't just fighting for black people. He was fighting for humanity. His dream was for everyone who ever felt less because of their color, their class, or their circumstance. And today, his words still echo. Every time we talk about equality, every time we stand against injustice, his dream lives on. Now, here's the moral takeaway. Martin Luther King Jr. showed us that real power is not in guns or fists. It's in the courage to love when hate surrounds you. It's in the discipline to stay peaceful when the world provokes you. And it's in the refusal to stay silent when silence means siding with the oppressor. His life teaches us that one voice, if used with conviction, can shake nations. So what about you, in your school, in your job, in your community? When you see unfairness, will you stay silent, or will you speak up? Remember, you don't have to be famous to make a difference. You just have to be brave enough to stand, because the dream of equality is not just Martin's dream, it's ours to carry forward. If this story moved you, do me a favor, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Martin's dream has been fulfilled, or are we still chasing it? And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that matter. Together, let's keep the dream alive.